the idyllic villages that cling to our coastline.
This is absolutely breathtaking.
Known for their beauty.
To approach under sail like this is just thrilling.
And serenity.
It's a snapshot of a period that we've now lost.
Now destinations for our leisure. But once they played a vital role in the history of our island nation.
I can't believe this is actually happening.
Oh, wow. We've got a lunar landscape there.
It's incredibly important in terms of our heritage, and it's all happening here.
I'm Ben Robinson, and as an archaeologist, I'm fascinated by our coastal villages, their history, their development through time, and in the case of this particular village, the vision behind its origins.
The village of Thorpeness is in Suffolk, 21 miles from Ipswich. It was the first purpose-built seaside village in the UK. We'll find out about the man who created this elite Edwardian getaway.
Ogilvy didn't want piers, ice cream sellers. There's no promenade here. That's absolutely conscious.
And discover the secrets that lie behind its fantastical houses.
You feel quite special. It makes you feel special because this is yours.
And why a village built for pure fantasy faced stark reality in 1940.
Churchill said we'll fight them on the beaches, and that's literally what they planned to do.
There's a fascinating story to this village by the sea.
I'm taking a view of the coastline here on board a rib, which makes light work of this boisterous North Sea.
I'm off the Suffolk coast, and this is where the sunrise is seen by England for the first time in the day, every day. And I'm just looking down the coast here at the old town of Aldborough, a medieval town that's become a much-loved seaside resort. But here, just behind me, is something a bit different, a bit quirky. There's a house that seems to be floating. It's just something that looks like a medieval castle sprouting out of the village. Think of an Edwardian cross between Centre Parks, Disneyland, and you've got something a little bit close. This is Thorpeness. Now, at first glance, you might think that you're looking at 16th and 17th century houses. Look, the pointy arched doorway there, the jetties, the timber studs and braces. But they're not quite what they seem, and there's little clues here. The timber is quite uniform. It's not gnarled and worn with age. They're not all wonky and wobbly. And this lake maybe looks like it's been here forever, but again, it's hiding something. Not all is as it seems in Thorpeness. The lake was constructed in the early 20th century, as was virtually everything I can see around me. The village, the lake, is the creation of one man, Glencairn Stuart Ogilvy.
Glencairn's father, Alexander, had amassed a great fortune engineering new industrial railway networks around the world, and he'd bought a country home in the area, along with 6,000 acres of land. When he died in 1908, it all passed down to his son. Glencairn was a barrister and playwright who was fascinated by old architecture.
When Glencairn came to view his inheritance, he found a tiny hamlet called Thorpe, just a few scattered cottages and some flooded fields. Amazingly, he took one look at it and thought to himself, let's keep it and build a holiday village.
Glencairn wanted to create the perfect place to escape to. He decided to rename it Thorpeness to distinguish it from the 16 other Thorpes in Suffolk. Hamish Ogilvy has grown up with the stories of his great-great-grandfather's vision.
So this row has lovely sea views. Well, this one's called Sea View.
Yes. These are some of the original buildings that were put up in the 1910s as some of the first houses in Thorpeness.
But I'm just struck as we walk round, much of the village, it's not all front, is it? A lot of seaside places are all front, all looking out over the sea, and the kind of working bit is at the back. Here, the village actually spreads out inland.
Yes, it was all built really with the mere as the centre of the village. And so a lot of the village was built initially around the mere, and that's how the development really happened.
So a seaside resort that faces inland.
Around 1910, Glencairn began building. One of the first constructions was the country club, which he grandly called the Kursaal, German for spa.
So the country club was here to provide tennis, bingo, dances. Great-great-grandfather always felt that if the children were happy and occupied, then the parents got a holiday.
So this was very much the social hub of the village.
Yes, very much so.
It seems pretty clear that he had an eye for the dramatic. There's a theatrical aspect to this village.
He had a vision to create a vision of a merry England, the sort of mock Tudor style, the classic black and white houses. By training while he was a barrister, he never actually practiced law. He was far keener on being a playwright and actually produced a number of plays in the West End. And I think he brought some of that to Thorpeness.
Are you proud to be a descendant of this man?
Very much so. His vision of what the village could be is as true now as it was then.
There is nowhere quite like it. It's just extraordinary.
Glencairn may have wanted to create a nostalgic, merry old England, but behind the facade, in reality, the village is a giant, timber-clad stage set.
New construction techniques and cheaper materials enabled Ogilvy to build his vision quicker and more cost-effectively. You wouldn't immediately guess by looking at these buildings now, but they were built with some very modern, innovative materials of the time. There's a clue here, though, in the walls around them. Look here, concrete blocks with beach shingle in them.
In the early 20th century, concrete production was in its infancy, and Glencairn realised he had a key ingredient readily available on the beach. In 1920, he imported a machine from Australia, which allowed him to mass-produce concrete blocks. Thorpeness was one of the first building projects in the UK to harness its potential, and it's hidden under nearly every structure. Nowhere can Glencairn's mix of old and new be seen more clearly than the almshouse, which he built for retired workers in 1928.
Wow, what a space. This was a community room, a reading room, somewhere where the retired workers could come, look at the newspapers, chat, look out of the window at the comings and goings. Lovely, lofty room, lit by these massive windows, stone mullioned on both sides, letting in light, stained glass, wood panelling, great beams on corbels here. And it looks like a library and a stately home. It's incredible. But there's some hidden construction here. It's often good to have a look behind the scenes if you can. Ha-ha! So, we've got brick here, the timber, but look, here's the concrete blocks, the shingle in them. At its core, this building uses that same economy of construction, the concrete blocks, the shingle from the beach.
Glencairn believed that by seeing beauty, you could nourish your soul. He didn't just build lavish houses here. In 1912, he began to create a boating lake, harnessing nature itself. Craig Block, like his dad before him, is the Mere's boatman.
This is a beautiful way to see Thorpeness, isn't it?
I think it's the only way to see Thorpeness until you get on here and just realise how big and beautiful it is. And You see the village at a different perspective, really.
And what's it like to have this family association with this place?
When I took over, I was only 24, so a lot of the older generation was said, "Boy, you won't stick that job. You know, you want to be out on the beer on a Friday night, and you won't get up Saturday morning." So I mean, I did go on the beer, and I did get up on a Saturday morning. So I just proved them wrong, really.
You can do both.
I can drink and I can row and I can get up in the morning, yeah.
So if nothing else, over 30-odd years...
There's three things I can do in life.
Family legend has it that in 1911, Ogilvy witnessed a typical East Anglian mist laying low over the flooded marshes, giving the illusion of a lake.
What he saw was just some boggy land, just some wet land.
Yeah, all it was a grazing marsh. And they decided, right, let's dig a lake. And that's what they done.
I'm told it was all dug out by hand.
It was indeed, yeah. They decided, we'll only go 3 foot deep, and then children can use it at a very young age in reasonable safety.
I can see the bottom.
We can see
it's
the bottom,
not deep
yeah.
at all, is it?
We can't see the gold, though. That's
No gold.
No gold.
Glencairn was good friends with J.M. Barrie, whose book Peter Pan had a big influence on the lake's theme. He was, after all, creating his own Neverland.
They wanted to keep a percentage of islands where they could have Wendy's house, the fort, Peter Pan's property, all in character with J.M. Barrie.
Oh, look, there's Wendy's house.
Wendy's house,
through
yeah.
there, got a little glimpse of it.
You got a little Wendy's house in there, yeah. It's getting children to enjoy the lake, enjoy the scenery, and a sense of adventure, yeah.
Yeah.
It first opened in June 1913. In fact, the boat we're in now is an original boat that was rowed in 1913.
Really, is it?
Yeah, I think J.M. Barrie and one of the Ogilvies would have been in this.
Crikey. So I've got a very privileged...
So you're privileged to row that, yeah.
Privileged position.
I mean,
but hang on, how come I'm rowing it if I'm so privileged?
Well, I'll do the talking.
You do the talking, I'll do the rowing.
You do the rowing.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
By the summer of 1912, Glencairn's village was ready to welcome its first holiday makers. Taking a holiday became popular in Victorian times. The Industrial Revolution saw the rise of the steam train, which gave access to our coastal retreats. And with the introduction of the bank holiday in 1871, people flocked to the beach. British seaside author Catherine Ferry has researched the early visitors to the village.
Who was this resort intended for? Who was coming?
They were pretty well off. You had to have a certain level of income to be able to take the time away, because the buildings here were sort of leased for a month at a time. So you've got to be leisured. By the 1910s, people from all levels of society could hope to go on some kind of holiday, but they would be going to very different resorts depending on what social class they were. And this was always intended to be for people who eschewed kind of populist amusements and entertainments. They didn't want piers, ice cream sellers. There's no promenade here. That's absolutely conscious.
So the bright lights, the amusement parks, the roller coasters, if you want that,
You've got to
somewhere else.
Go elsewhere,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was how they kept it exclusive, by not offering that kind of thing. You didn't necessarily have to price people out if you just didn't provide what they wanted.
This was for families. It's a family holiday.
And that's really unusual. To cater for children specifically was really unheard of in the Edwardian period, because lots of resorts just considered children to be a bit of a nuisance, really. So to do that here was a real selling point, albeit that you'd bring your nanny to look after them probably, you know, but it was very much focused around children, and that was really, really rare for the time.
That's really interesting. And then you start to think about how to get people here in the first place. But of course, this is the age of motoring. So families can motor down now in a way that they couldn't before.
And that's another thing about the class of people, isn't it? These were aristocrats, wealthy middle-class people who were able to afford their own cars. So I think in the early 1920s, a full decade before car ownership really sort of grew exponentially, he was building garaging for a large number of cars. And that wouldn't have been the case anywhere else around the coast because people couldn't afford it in those numbers.
And there's no big railway station in the centre of the village.
The remoteness is actually part of the attraction. So it isn't at the end of a railway line. If it were, it would be too easy for people to get on a cheap day excursion from towns and cities and just come and sort of fill the beach with their noise, and you know that it would be too popular. And that's not what Ogilvy wanted. He wanted to keep a kind of select tone just for those people who would appreciate it.
Above all else, Glencairn wanted people to appreciate his creation. But not everything he built here was new. This wonderful post mill dates to the early 19th century. Charlie Goddard has spent the last 10 years restoring it.
Oh, this is your mill?
It is.
Good grief.
Thorpeness windmill.
How long have you been a miller?
We bought the windmill in 2010. I couldn't bear seeing it falling apart, really. So, I don't know, call it foolish, but I now am the proud owner of a windmill.
This is another building that's not what it seems. It's not for grinding corn, it's actually a water pump, and was brought here by Glencairn in 1923 to supply fresh water to the village.
It was moved from a village 2 miles inland called Aldringham to replace a metal windmill because he had a vision, and his vision didn't include a rather ugly metal windmill. So he found out that the miller had retired in Aldringham, so decided let's move the windmill from Aldringham to Thorpeness.
So it had to be dismantled, put here, and resurrected. And I bet it wasn't plain sailing then. Can we have a look around?
Oh, yes, please do.
Oh, lovely. Oh, wow. Well, there it is. Everything revolves around this post.
Yep, this is it. This is what takes the weight.
Yeah, just incredible. And to think we're in a building that actually rotates. That was the whole point, so you can face it into wind.
Yep.
Look at this timber as well. I mean, you don't get timber like this anymore, do you? Dear me.
Massive.
Huge. It just brings home the sheer effort in moving a structure like this. I mean, timber frame buildings, you can theoretically, treat them like big jigsaw puzzles, take them apart, put them together again. But that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Absolutely. Shall I show you the mechanisms of the pump?
Yeah.
With the sails at full speed, the mill extracted 1,800 gallons of water an hour.
Mind your head.
From a 38-foot well.
So this is where that wind power is translated into water pumping power. Here you've got a solution that's practical, but also whimsical, and also so in keeping this whole idea of creating, the perfect English village. Has to have a windmill, has to be an old windmill.
Ogilvy did the most wonderful job, and he did create something totally unique in Britain. It really is. There's nothing else like Thorpeness.
Glencairn also built 2 water tanks, but he thought they were too ugly. The solution was sheer theatre, a floating fairy tale cottage on top of a tower, now known as the House in the Clouds.
What an incredible building this is. This is the icon of Thorpeness, the most recognisable building in a place full of incredible buildings. It looks like some sort of medieval fantasy tower. Look at that jettied top story there, those arch braces, the weatherboarding running down it. Is it timber frame? Is it built of concrete? No, it's built of steel. There's a steel frame in there supporting a water tank. It was just a water tower, but it's been given a heck of a makeover.
Sylvia Lacoma bought the House in the Clouds in the 1970s.
Sylvia, I've admired this house from afar for years. It's a silly question, but what attracted you to the place?
We had the choice of this one or the other water tower.
So you had two water towers as a choice?
Yes, yes, yes. The other one looks like a sort of castle entrance or a church. My husband wanted that. I'm not quite sure why, but I wanted this desperately.
Why?
There's nothing like it in the world. I mean, I couldn't resist it.
Originally, only the stalk of the house provided holiday accommodation. But when the village was connected to the mains water supply in the 1970s, Sylvia was able to remove the tank.
Right, the room at the top.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is just fantastic. And to think a massive water tank once stood in here.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, it's like a medieval great hall, isn't it?
I know.
I mean, this is almost like theatre balcony, isn't it?
It is,
or
well,
a
it is.
minstrel's gallery
Yeah.
or something like that.
Exactly.
And now I'm starting to get a sense of the views as well. The sea there, look at it. Lovely view over the mere. It's really clever, the way the village has been laid out.
Yes, it is.
It's not just about individual buildings, it's about a whole set piece. But it's from up here that you appreciate it most. What is it like living in a landmark, being in a famous building that people want to have a look at? Come on, are you bothered by the attention?
No, it makes me laugh, mostly. A lot of people walk straight in because they think it's open to the public. I mean, once I was up here and I came downstairs and there were two ladies sitting at the dining table.
Expecting a cup of tea?
I don't know. I said, can I help you? They said, oh, no, we just, just came in. But it was open. So,
And what does Thorpeness feel like as a village to live in?
you feel quite special. It makes you feel special because this is yours. I think I feel very privileged to be the protector of the house in the clouds, which is one of the most unique buildings in the world.
Thorpeness is built on nostalgic values and a sense of old-fashioned fun. This is epitomised by the Children's Regatta, which is held every year on the Mere.
Thorpeness Regatta, the children's Henley. With all the strength of their years, young watermen and women race their dinghies 50 yards over the waters of Thorpeness Mere, 2 feet deep. An egg and spoon race concludes the meeting with some of the eggs fairly well scrambled at the finish.
The regatta has been held here for a century. In fact, it was only cancelled during World War II.
Salute to youth.
In 1940, this village designed for pure fantasy was plunged into stark reality when Thorpeness became part of Britain's first line of defence. Dr. John Greenacre is a military historian and served 24 years in the British Army.
Well, the East Coast was great for trade with Europe, but when a threat comes, this is the coast that's going to get it.
Yes, it makes it really vulnerable. This coast is the closest to any invasion that should take place. Of course, Churchill said we'll fight them on the beaches, and that's literally what they planned to do. And so these beaches that we're stood on now became a bastion of defence with dragon's teeth in the water, metal girders designed to rip open the bottoms of landing craft, minefields which would drift around with the tides and the shingle, barbed wire, then pillboxes, some 25 pillboxes built along just this short stretch of coast.
And did the village itself become part of these fortifications?
In July 1940, Churchill declared that within these vulnerable coastal zones that the population should be encouraged to leave voluntarily. And about 60% of the population did initially leave and left their houses, and many of those were then requisitioned by the army to be used as billets, cookhouses. Towards the end of 1942, visitors can't come into the restricted area, and the residents themselves have their movements controlled and checked. So everyone that stayed here in Thorpeness would have been involved in some way or other with what was going on in this defended zone.
It's just incredible to think of the activity that was going on, because of course you've got the huge number of airfields inland as well, all the planes coming over.
You'd have seen the soldiers on a day-to-day basis. You'd have seen those aircraft day and night, the air raids day and night as well.
It must have been an incredibly noisy, busy place, and now there's people relaxing on the beach. It's just so difficult to imagine.
When the war ended in 1945, Glencairn finally got his village back. Dr. Charlotte DeMille, his great-granddaughter, has researched this time.
Charlotte, this was a war zone and it was covered with military paraphernalia. All of that had to be cleared up.
Yes, so apart from those barbed wire, which was cleared up very early, the big problem was mines. And my great-grandfather kept a chronicle of what was going on during this time. And there's a letter in June where he says he's just arrived and he's gone to meet the local sapper who had been responsible for clearing the mines off the Thorpeness beach. And he talks about the plan, which was to blast the whole beach away down to a depth of 8 foot with a jet of water. So taking all the shingle, everything, scouring it right out, which hopefully would take all the mines with it as well. And the plan was basically that the tide and the weather would bring the beach back, minus the mines. So, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a follow-up. So, so this is very much a one-off letter, and I wish I knew what happened next.
Well, they must have cleared the mines and the shingles come back as well.
Yeah, they must have done.
There are things going on beyond Ogilvy's control, but the village persists and it thrives. Why do you think that is, that enduring appeal?
It's kind of got everything for families, especially when you see it on a day like today with the sunshine and the boating lake. And the beach is beautiful and it hasn't been overly developed subsequently. I think that makes it incredibly special, and I think that's one of the things that, that the people who do come back really value. In fact, my great-grandfather kept a notebook where he talks about the village. So he has this vision of people in the village who would be fun-loving, but they would also be caring and nationalistic. And there's this list which is quite extraordinary. But he feels that the effect of a beautiful place is going to have an effect on people's spiritual well-being. He's such a forward-thinking person.
The Ogilvy estate was devastated by death duties in the 1970s. When Glencairn's son died, the family had to sell most of Thorpeness to meet the tax bill. It's telling that they couldn't bear to part with the mere, Glencairn's pride and joy, where children have played for a century.
Thorpeness is still offering the essentials of that vision that Ogilvy had. Good, clean fun. But now anyone can come and visit, have a row out on the mere, take in the architecture, stroll along the beach. This really is a unique and special village by the sea.